I would also like to inform you something about CPC, what we are doing these days. As you know, technology plays a major role in every aspect, every domain of service and administration in our country. And Income Tax Department has also used technology extensively. And Central Processing Center is a result, for the last 9 to 10, for more than 10 years, CPC is in existence. And all of you are aware that 98% of the income tax returns in the country are processed in CPC ITR. And if you see that around, we process, in the last few years, we used to process about 12.5 lakh returns per day. Now we have the capacity. Let me share the good news with you. The new platform after 10 years, CPC 2.0 or 2.0, whatever you call, that platform has been started, rolled out by CPC. Now, dear friends, we are planning, since we have the capacity to process more returns, you will be getting your returns processed fast. You will be getting your refunds faster, provided you file your return without any defect. Your return has been duly verified, and as per the instructions given in filing of the return, if that is followed, definitely you will get your returns processed even in a couple of days. If you file a return today, we are soon going to a scenario where in a day we may be able to process the return if it is a valid return without any problem. That means those who do not have any demand pending, those who file a valid verified return can get even refund in the bank account maybe in a couple of days. That is what we are going to have it shortly. And now all the refunds are sent through ECS directly to bank account, and that has also saved a lot of cost and a lot of difficulties for taxpayers. ITR 7 e-filing facility we started in financial year 2013-14, and as you know, along with ITR 7 or much before that, we may have to file certain statutory forms. So the uploading of the forms we started in the e-filing portal from 2016-17. This year we expect more than 2.5 lakh ITR 7 returns in this month and next month. And my request to all of you, please don't wait till the last date to file your return. Please file it early. Now from 2021 assessment year onwards, you have to file the statutory forms like Form 10B, 10BB, and all these forms have to be filed 1 month before the filing due date. Please ensure that you file all this month itself, the coming days itself, and then followed by the filing of return. Don't wait for the last date to file the return. And regarding filing of return for earlier years, and forms have been, some cases forms have been delayed, returns have been delayed. On all those cases, CBDT has passed circulars for condonation powers have been given to the Commissioner of Income Tax. And in the subsequent sessions, which is coming today, our speakers will be explaining to you the condonation circulars, where you can approach the jurisdictional Commissioner of Income Tax for petitions for specific years that will be explained to you in the coming the subsequent sessions. Let me tell you also one more thing that we find in many cases where this type of defects or prima facie adjustments are to be made, we send communication to taxpayer. And if you see the entire different type of ITR 7 which have come, number of cases where defects are there are actually minimal. Though people really feel that there are a lot of cases CPC is sending prima facie adjustment notices. It is, if you see the total overall income tax returns filed in CPC, only in 2% of cases there are problems, where we have to issue some notices or intimations for filing explanation, and then prima facie adjustment is done. Otherwise, 98% of returns now filed in CPC, it will go through without any issue. Now it is our responsibility. Let us take as a pride to file return error-free so that no prima facie adjustment or defect should happen to any of your clients, any of the institutions. One important thing I would like to say that after filing return, please make sure that you verify the return. That is a must. If you verify the return, things will be faster for us to process the return. I would also like to inform you that when you use the utility for filing the return, I encourage you to use the departmental utility. Why I'm saying that, when we were looking at the utilities of taxpayers used, tax consultants used for filing the return, ITR 7, we find a lot of errors happening in relation to some utilities, some private utilities. So I encourage you to use, if possible, departmental utility, which is free utility, which is available for filing ITR 7. One advantage is that if you think that ITR 7 is complicated, it is not complicated. It is actually simple. But because if you use ITR, this ITD income tax utility, you'll find that you need to fill up only those columns which are necessary. So it will mask the sense you need not fill up certain column which is not part of yours. For the exemption in which you are claiming, whatever section under which you are claiming, certain columns need not be filled. So some utility, what happened, they will have all these columns exhibited, and you'll try to type it in the wrong place, then that will create problem. ITD utility, if you use, it will be little more smoother. Another point I would like to highlight is, whenever issue communication to taxpayers, whenever we find there is a defect, there is a problem, there is an error, we want to issue a communication to you to rectify it, to correct it. What happens many times, we are not getting response. Around 60 to 70% of cases, we don't get response properly. So that means we are not getting response means either you are not giving your correct email ID or even the cell phone number in the return. So please ensure that the concerned trust institutions correct email ID, which is active email ID, is used as a primary email ID, and secondary email ID can be your tax consultant or your CAS email ID or whatever which you fill, or their mobile number also, that be a responsible person of the institutions. That mobile number should be given, because all these things are sent as e-communication, as SMS, as well as email. Please ensure that correct communication IDs are given. Now, most of the cases we find the forms are delayed. That will be a problem. Please ensure the forms are not delayed. Don't wait for a condonation procedure to be followed. That will eat up a lot of your time. So please file on time the forms, and then followed by the return. You know that forms are very important. Why? See, even in 1860, when the Income Tax Act was introduced in the country itself, so decades earlier, we had the provision of exempting the charities, exempting the education institutions, exempting the notified concerns. Why? The country is a welfare state. Country development can be done through the support of various taxpayers, various institutions, charitable institutions. They contribute a lot for the society's development. That is why the government has introduced exemptions, various exemptions in Income Tax Act. So this is only to encourage more spending for the developmental activity, education, health, and various sectors. At the same time, my dear friends, you are aware that there may be some institutions who are not disciplined in their accounting, disciplined in their the management of funds, disbursal of funds. So it is very difficult for government or income tax department to understand or assess which charitable organization is doing correctly, which charitable institution not doing correctly. So only way to understand who is doing correctly is to ask them to be accountable, disclose their accounts, disclose their affairs properly to the authorities. When we give a tax exemption to any entity, it is actually a tax money outgo for the government. These public funds, when the tax is exempt for an institution, it is a loss of money for the entire country and their people. So we are answerable, we are accountable to public, whether the institution which is claiming exemption, whether they are doing their affairs properly. So when they claim the exemption, they may have to give certain disclosures in the return and also forms. Return is filed by the institution, but that has to be supported, substantiated, authenticated by an audit report. So a person who is knowledgeable, expert in the field, who has the statutory power, like a chartered accountant, is a person who is supposed to complete the audit formalities and fill up the form, whatever form 10B or 10BB, all these forms. So these forms are very important. So just filing return but delaying the form will make the entire proceedings invalid. Return will become defective. So please make sure that the audit reports, whatever forms, are filed on time by the taxpayers, by all the institutions. Today we have sessions on various aspects. Like after my session, there will be as Ramesh, additional director, has mentioned, a session on how to fill up the ITR 7. So once that is done, we also will be having common mistakes noticed, and also how to rectify the errors and frequently asked questions. All this will be taken care of. So please, whatever questions which have come have been already taken into consideration, because most of the questions are common. So we have identified the more common questions, and that will be taken up. And also you can also type in the chat box certain questions. And sometimes these questions, most of the questions when you write the chat box would be answered during the session itself by the different, because already it's a common questions, it would be answered. And please limit your questions only on ITR 7 and the role of CPC. What is the role of CPC? CPC's role is processing your ITR. So taking the ITR filed by you in e-filing unit and process it, issue refund, conduct the rectification proceedings. These are the demand management. These are the work of CPC. So please don't ask questions regarding why this provision is there, why this section is there. This may not be directly the purview of CPC as such. But in case you raise any larger concern about legislative intention of this particular section, why this section that can be changed, you can always type it. We will take it forward with the respective authority. We may not be able to answer here. We are not authorized to answer those questions. We will definitely take it up with the authority. So now let me ask Pierre Ramesh to continue the proceedings. Thank you so much. I'll come back again at the end.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your explaining to the participants the rationale behind the exemptions, and also the importance of filing the proper forms and within stipulated time, these kind of things. Anyway, now I hope the attendees, most of the questions will be relating to how to fill the ITR 7. So this session, I request Prashanti to take over and answer she will answer almost all the queries which have been raised as questions which have come to us in advance. Now I hand over the session to Prashanti for taking the attendees through guidance for filing ITR 7 for assessment year 2020. Over to you, Prashanti.
Thank you so much, sir. Let me first extend my warm welcome to everyone. The objective of today's presentation is to provide guidance to the SSC filing ITR 7. As we are aware, many SSCs are facing difficulty filing this ITR. So hence, I will walk you through the session-wise provisions and parallelly helps you to understand how to mention the relevant information in ITR 7 utility. Then let me first start with section 11. If the SSCs are eligible to claim exemption under section 11, the SSC has to be provide the registration particulars under section 12A, 12AA in Part A General. And next, the written furnished section should be selected as 139(4)A. And next one is section under which exemption claimed should be as section 11. These details has to be filled in Schedule Part A General. And income details has to be disclosed in Schedule A, that is aggregate of income. And the SSCs are receiving any donation, the details has to be disclosed in Schedule VC, that is voluntary contribution. And application of income, which is related to the revenue expenditure, should be disclosed in Schedule ER. Please. Application of income which is related to capital nature, that should be disclosed in Schedule EC. And next, exemption under section 11(1)(a) claimed in Schedule EC will be allowed to the extent of net consideration disclosed in Schedule AI. The net consideration of capital asset has to be disclosed in Schedule AI. Then, if the total income of the trust or institution exceeds maximum amount which is not chargeable to Income Tax Act, then the SSC has to file audit report in Form 10B 1 month prior to the due date specified under section 139(1) as per 44 AB provisions. So here the section is telling the 139(1) and not 139 4A and 5. So people has to file audit report under section 139(1). Now the audit report for AY 2021 has to be filed before 31st December 2020. We are all requesting all SSCs to file the audit report before this date. Next, if the SSC eligible to claim exemption under section 11(1), that is a deemed application, then SSC has to e-file Form 9A within the due date specified under section 139(1). Here the date is specified only 139(1). And next, the accumulation of income. If the SSC has having any accumulation of income and claiming exemption under section 11(2), the SSC has to be e-file Form 10 and return. Here the Form 10 and return both has to be e-filed within the due date specified under section 139(1). So if the SSC is claiming any exemption under section 11(2), please file Form 10 and return within the due date. Then if there is any change in the objectives or activities during the year, the SSC has to make an application to the SING officer within 30 days from the date of that change. If SSC is not make an application to the SING officer, they are not eligible to claim exemption for that particular year. Then, and the details of the change, date of the change, and press registration of 12A, they need to provide in Schedule Part A General 2. All details has to be provided. Then next comes, if the objectives of the trust is advancement of any other objective of general public utility, and the receipts of that objective should be, and percentage of these activities should be mentioned in Part A General 2. The details of that receipts and percentage needs to be provided in Part A General. However, the percentage of the receipts of that activity should not exceed 20% of the total receipts of the trust or institution. If the SSC is having more than that receipts is more than 20%, the SSC is not eligible to claim exemption for that particular year. We are requesting the SSCs to, if the receipts is more than 20%, no need of claiming exemption for that particular year. Now I want to show the utility to fill all the above details where we need to fill in their utility. Stop this. Cheers. Not this. 1 minute.
Prashant is encountering some technical glitch. However, she is trying to set it right. She'll be before you in another minute.
Midway, let me answer a query which have been raised in the chat box regarding why CPC is processing but under 143 raising prima facie adjustments, and why not the assessing officer? Let me inform you that CPC's entire system is automated. So if there is a small error in the return or in the form or the schedule, so that will be picked up by the system and error will be coming. And we have a facility for online rectification. Wherever you can online rectify, we'll take it up. And wherever you cannot rectify it through online by CPC, all these cases we are sending to assessing officer for necessary rectification. So the query was that why not AO do the rectification? Yes, all those cases AO will do the rectification.
I think Prashanti has corrected that technical glitch. She'll be presenting the utility before you in a short while.
One of the questions I have seen over here is that whether audit report can be filed by a case which is not eligible, which is not required to be filed. Actually, the audit is a job assigned by the SSE to the CA, and it has to be done on the e-filing portal. If the SSE feels that he needs his books to be audited and a report has to be uploaded, it is done, and after uploading of the audit report, it has to be approved by the SSE. The e-filing portal does not disallow any person from uploading audit report which is uploaded by an auditor who has been assigned with the job of doing the audit.
By the way, I will introduce Lakshmi, who is my colleague in CPC. She is a joint director. She is the one who is answering some of the queries. So thanks, Lakshmi, and hope you can continue till that technical issue is resolved.
Another question which has been asked in the chat box is about situation where the assessee is not registered under 12A and is not claiming exemption under 11, is he required to file ITR 7? No, if the charitable institution is not claiming any exemptions, they can file ITR 5, and the it has all the schedules which are required to be furnished for furnishing details of income and their expenditure and all those things. And the status, the persons who are having doubts about the status of assessee being a charitable institution and liable for tax as per individual slab rates, you will have to select the status of the person appropriately in the return part A general. In this case, it will be status will be AOP and the substatus would be charitable trust. In that case, the slab rates of individuals would be applicable, or if they are a society registered under Society Registration Act, that should be the substatus which should be selected in the return which is being filed. This is very, very important for the computation of taxes. System computes the tax according to the status of the assessee as mentioned in the return. So the return schedules in the return and details have to be appropriately furnished so that the correct rate of tax can be applied for the assessee when the system is processing the return.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for that enlightening information. Prashanti, I think you are ready with the screens.
Yes, sir.
You can go ahead.
Here, see, first thing is details of registration are approved under Income Tax Act. So this is the mandatory if you are required to be registered. So here the utility is providing the drop downs. If you see the drop down, the section 1023 AAA 4, 5, 6, 6A, 12A, 13, 13B and 13. See here the what are the registration certificate is required under Income Tax Act. It is given in the return. So whatever section is applicable to the SSE, please give the details of the registration particulars and give the date of registration and approval details and approving authority and all. Then next comes to the return furnished section. Here 139 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D and others. So only these people, these SSEs only can file the ITR 7. So if you select 4A, the section under which exemption claimed is coming only section 11. And if you select the 4B, here the section under which exemption claimed only the 13A and 13B. Then it next comes to if select the 139 4C. Here all section 10s, 1021, 1020B, all section 10 will be available here. So if your SSE is eligible to claim any section 10, first he needs to select return furnished section should be 139 4C and select the section exemption claimed. The next schedule I, this is the accumulation of. Here, the details of amounts accumulated are set apart within the meaning of section 11 or in terms of section 23. If the SSE is having any amount of accumulation in the year of this thing, the SSE has to give the details here and he has to invest that amount in 11.5 modes. So whatever you are accumulating, whatever you are invested, we need to fill here. Then next comes to schedule AI, that is aggregate of income. If you see the name of the schedule, it indicates the aggregate of income derived during the previous year, excluding voluntary contribution to be filled by SSE claiming exemption under section 11 or 1023C 4, 5, 6, 6A. Only the SSEs are claiming under these two sections, they has to to be filled this schedule. Next comes to schedule ER. The name indicates revenue expenditure incurred during the year. This is a revenue account. This schedule to be filled by SSC claiming exemption under section 11 or 1023C 4566C. Only these people only, these SSCs only has to be filled this schedule. Then next come to schedule EC. Here also the name is clearly telling the schedule is applicable only these SSCs. Then next comes to IE1. This is the income and expenditure statement. This is applicable to the section 10 people. Here we are clearly telling the section who are claiming exemption under section 1021, 1022B, 1023 AAA and other class of section 10. Only these SSCs only has to be filled this schedule. Then and IE2 income and expenditure. This schedule also the name indicates clearly is telling SSC claiming exemption under section 1023A and 1024. So overall claiming other section exemptions, no need to fill this IE2. Then IE3. Here this is telling SSC is claiming exemption 1023C 3AB or 1023C 3AC. Only these two SSCs only has to provide the details in this schedule. The next comes to IE4. Here there is SSC claiming exemption under section 1023C 3AD or 3AE. Only these two SSCs only has to provide the details in this schedule. So we are requesting all SSCs, please read the heading name and see the session to whom it is applicable and fill the details in the written. So here the next section is exemption under section 1023C 4, 5, 6 and 6A. So if the SSCs are eligible to claim under any of this section, first SSC has to be provide the approval details in schedule part A general, and return furnished session should be selected as 139(4)C, and section under which exemption claim should be selected as 1023C 4, 5, 6, 6, which is related to the particular SSCs. Here, the income details should be disclosed in Schedule A, that is aggregate of income, and is having any voluntary contribution has to be shown in Schedule VC, voluntary contribution. Then application of income, which is related to revenue nature, they should be disclosed in Schedule ER. Here, whatever the schedules is applicable to section 11, the same thing will be applied for these 4 SSCs also. Then next, application of income, which is related to capital nature, should be disclosed in Schedule EC. And then here audit report, if the total income of the SSCs exceed maximum amount which is not chargeable to Income Tax Act, they needs to file audit report in Form 10BB 1 month prior to the due date specified in under section 139(1). So who are claiming under this section, please file the audit report in 10BB. Here many of the SSCs are getting confused in filing audit report. If you are giving the registration particular in 1023C 4, 5, 6A in the return, but the audit report is filing in Form 10B. So we are requesting all SSCs to file the proper audit report. For these sections, they have to file Form 10BB, and if they are claiming section 11, they have to be filing Form 10B. Then next, the accumulation of income. If the SCs are claiming section exemption under section 11(2), the amount of accumulation should be filled in Schedule I. So here there is no conditions to file Form 10 and return within the due date like section 11. So only the SSCs has to provide the amount of accumulation in Schedule I. And the next, if the SSCs are approved under section only 10.33C 4 or 5, that is charitable or religious purpose. If their objective is a advancement of any other object of general public utility, if the receipts of that trust or institution should not exceed 20% of the total receipts of the trust or institution. So if the receipts of this object of this trust exceeds 20%, the SSCs are not eligible to claim exemption under the 1023C 4 or 5. One minute this. So if the SCs are, if any SSC is having the receipts of this object exceeds 20%, is not eligible to claim exemption under section 1023C 4 or 5. So what are the schedules I showed in the written? Same thing will apply to the section 11 and 1023C 4, 5, 6C. And next comes to section 10. Exemption under section 1021. The research associations who are approved under section 35, only those SSCs has eligible to claim exemption under this section 1021. Then the registration details under section 35 has to be filled in Schedule Part A General. Under income tax, the drop down is already available. They have to be select the 35 and has to provide all the details of registration. Then return furnished section should be selected as 139(4)C or 4D. In 4D, some two classes are mentioning, class 1 or class 2 of section 35. Only those people has to select 139(4)D. And section under which exemption claimed should be selected as 1021 or 1021 read with 35 in Schedule Part A General. Then here, all the receipt details, whatever is having the receipts or income, should be disclosed in Schedule IE1 and or Schedule VC, voluntary contribution, or Schedule IE1 is income and expenditure. In Schedule IE1, it is clearly telling which this schedule to whom it is applicable. Please see the name of the schedule and fill the appropriate details. Then the amount of exemption should be entered in serial number 80 of Schedule Part BTA. For this section 1021, the separate line item is there in Schedule Part BTA. Only under that column has to be shown the amount of exemption. These are all the conditions to claim exemption in 1021 when filling the return. Next comes to exemption under section 1023 AAA. This is welfare of employees, welfare fund and all. So these SSCs has to provide the registration particulars under section 1023 AAA as per Income Tax Act. Should be the details should be filled in Schedule Part A General. And return furnished section should be selected as 4C. Under 4C, all these section under which exemption claimed is available in the return drop down. We need to select only drop down. So that section 1023 only has to select. And receipts should be disclosed in IE1 under Schedule VC, either of that. And exemption should be claimed in amount of exemption has to be entered in 8D of Schedule Part BTA. This is all about 1023 AAA. Then exemption under section 23. This is applicable to the professions of law, medicine, engineering, or any other specified professions notified by the central government. Sorry for the inconvenience. 1 minute.
There has been a query on whether the accumulation is allowed where application is above 85%. Yes, it is allowed, but it would be required for you to claim whatever amount you are accumulating, for which you don't have to file a Form 10 or any other requirements are not applicable. But if you have applied more than 85%, the amount which has been accumulated can be claimed in Part BTI in serial number 4. There is a specific place where you can enter the accumulation so that it will get allowed. It need not be exactly 15% or anything. It to the amount, the exact amount of which you are going to accumulate, which is not exceeding 15%, that can be mentioned over there, and it will be allowed in your processing. There was a query on why a return should not be filed without exemption, without claim of exemption. As you are aware, this ITR 7 has been provided for filing the particulars of exemptions being claimed by people who are not liable to tax, but that information about their exemption is furnished in the return so that it will help in the policy making of the government or the authorities. So it is important that you claim your exemptions and show your particulars of exemptions in the return appropriately. If you are not liable for exemptions, you are not eligible for any of the exemptions, then use the correct form applicable to the entity, status of the entity. All statuses, you have a particular form, like ITR 1 for individual and similarly ITR 5 for a other than. It's a 5 is a omnibus clause in our rule for filing returns. So ITR 5 can be used by people for whom all other ITRs are not applicable. So the person who is not claiming exemption is advised to, that is the reason there may be a reason when you have given a response that ITRs, I don't want to claim exemption in the ITR 7. Maybe that is the reason it has been informed to you that you exactly claim an exemption when you are filing ITR 7. Maybe this point will be even clarified further after further taking up the matter with the concerned authorities. And there is a query on 12A registration is not captured by CPC despite filling up the necessary details. No. Furnished in the return, surely it is taken into account if 12A registration particulars are given. Here, I would like to say that there has been one more query over here. A person is claiming section 1025 exemption and is also mentioning that they are registered under section 12A. So what happens is, if you are registered under 12A, the person who is registered under 12A is not eligible to claim exemption under other clauses of section 10 except 1023C. So the decision has to be whether you are registered under 12A or you are not unconditionally exempt under section 1025, being recognized provident fund or other funds which are recognized and because of which your income is unconditionally exempt. So unnecessarily filling up details of 12A registration when you are not registered would lead to disallowance of section 10 clauses of section 10 exemption claimed in the return. So please take care that you do not put information which is not applicable to the assessee.
Prashanti, you can go ahead.
Here, the exemption under section 1023. This exemption is applicable to the persons who are law profession, law, medicine, engineering, or any other profession notified by the central government. Here, the return furnished in section should be selected as 139(4)(c), that we need to select in schedule part A general. And next section under which exemption claim should be 1023A in part A general. Receipt should be disclosed in IE2. Here the receipts has to be disclosed in income and expenditure IE2 schedule and schedule VC voluntary contribution. For 1023A in provision is telling if exemption is not allowable on HP income, interest and dividend income. So here for 1023A, SSCs are having CG income and BP income only eligible for claim exemption under this particular section. So the amount of exemption should be disclosed in serial number 8C of schedule part BTI. This is all about 1023A. And then exemption under section 1024. This is the trade unions. The unions are registered under Trade Unions Act. Then only those SSCs can claim exemption under section 1024. The return furnished section should be selected as 139(4)(c) in schedule part A general. Under this, the section under which exemption claim should be 1024, and the receipt should be disclosed in IE2 under schedule VC. Here 1023A and 1024, they have to disclose the receipts in schedule IE2. And here the provision is telling exemption is not allowable on BP income and capital gain income. The exemption is getting allowed on HP income, interest and dividend income. So the persons, the SSCs are claiming exemption 1024, not eligible to claim exemption on BP and CG income. Then the amount of exemption should be disclosed in serial number 9H of part BT. And section exemption and section 1023(3)AB or 3AC. These institutions substantially financed by the government. Here the SSCs has to select the return furnished section is 139(4)(c), and the section under which exemption claimed has to select 1023(AB) or AC, which is applicable to the SSC. And here the objective of the institution should be mentioned as education for 1023(3)AB. This is 3AB is for education and 3AC is for medical. So they need to select the objective is relevant object has to be selected. Then the receipt should be disclosed in schedule IE3 under schedule VC. Then here the condition is the grants received from the government should be disclosed in schedule VC or schedule IE3. See, these sections is telling that this should be substantially financed by the government. So the people, the SSCs are getting any grants from government, they need to provide the grants in schedule VC or schedule IE3. So as per the rule 2BB, the exemption is allowed only if the government grants of such university or other educational institution, hospital exceed 50% of the total receipts, including any voluntary contribution. Only those SSCs are eligible to claim exemption under these two sections. So the amount of exemption should be entered in serial number 9 of part BT, 9A or 9B, which is applicable to this. The next comes to exemption under section 1023(3)AD or 3AE. This is the education of medical. The return furnished section should be selected 139(4)(c) in part A general and section under which exemption claimed 3AD or 3AE, which is applicable to the SSC. Then here also the objective of the institution should be selected as education for 3AD and medical for 1023(c) 3AE. Receipt should be disclosed in schedule IE4 under schedule VC. As per rule 2BC, exemption is allowable only if the annual receipts of the university or other educational institution or hospital should not exceed 1 crore. If the receipts exceed 1 crore, the SSCs are not eligible to claim exemption under 1023(3)AD or 3AE. If the SSCs are having less than 1 crore receipts, only those SSCs can claim exemption under this section. Then amount of exemption should be entered in part BTI serial number 9, that is 9C or 9D. Then next come other section 10s, exemption of section 22B, 3B, 3D, all section 10s. Here the return furnished section should be selected on 139(4)C. Under 139(4)C, we have given all section under which exemption claim. We need to select which is applicable to the SSC. And next, receipt should be disclosed in schedule IE1 under schedule VC. And the amount of exemption should be entered in serial number 8 or 9 as applicable of schedule part BTI. All these sections is some sections are there in serial number 8 and some are in 9. So please check the section and fill the particular section. The next exemption under other class of section. Other class of section 10. So here the return furnished section should be as others in part A general. Under others, we are provided section under which exemption claimed. So all these sections are available in under that others. So then receipt should be disclosed in schedule IE1 under schedule VC. Then exemption amount should be entered in the serial number 10 of part BTI. So here some of the sections 1025 1 or 2 that approved provident fund and approved gratuity fund, total income is unconditionally exempt. Those SSCs, no need of filing any return. If the SSC is having any TDS, if the TDS is wrongly deducted by deductor, for claiming of the TDS, they can use ITR 7 to claim the refund. So if you see the board circular 18/2017, the circular is clearly mentioned. Can you please read the circular and file the return for that approved provident fund gratuity fund. The next come to exemption under section 13A. 13 is for political parties. So in political parties, the return furnished section should be selected as 139(4)B. Under 139(4)B is telling section under which exemption claim is 13A. They need to select the section, and the income should be mentioned under all heads of income and schedule VC. But the here condition is if the political party is having any business income, they are not eligible to claim exemption on that business income. Only other than business income only they can claim as exemption. And here the one more condition is like the return of income should be filed within the due date specified under section 139(1). If the SSCs are not filed the return within the due date under 139(1), they are not eligible to claim exempt under section 13A. So we are requesting all SSCs to file the return within the due date. Then schedule LA. The schedule LA has to be filled by the SSCs and has to be satisfied all the conditions which is mentioned in 13A. Like the books of accounts has to be maintained and books of account has to be audited, and the SSCs are receiving any donation is more than 20,000. They need to maintain the donor name and address of the donor, and the political party should not receive the cash donation more than 2,000. So all things are there in schedule LA. See all the line items and give the proper particulars in schedule LA. And the amount of exemption should be entered in serial number 12A of schedule part BTA. So these are all about section 13A. The next comes to exemption under 13B. This is the electoral trust. The electoral trust should provide the registration details under 13B in part A general, and return furnished section should be selected 139(4)B. And 4B it is clearly mentioned exemption claim section is 13B in schedule part A general. Here for electoral trust, the exemption is allowed only on voluntary contribution. If other than voluntary contribution, if the electoral trust is having any other income that is not eligible to claim exemption, they have to pay tax on that income. Schedule ET should be should be filled, and all conditions mentioned in section 13B has to be fulfilled. That books of accounts to be audited, and the 95% of the voluntary contribution has to be distributed to the political parties, and only 5% has to be used for administrative and other things. So all those conditions has to be satisfied to get this exemption. And next, amount of exemption should be entered in serial number 12B of schedule part BTA. So these are all about section 13B. So set the next other important points here. The before 2020, the audit report is like on or before filing of the return is there. Now the amendment of act is like 1 month prior to the due date mentioned under section 139(1). So before 1 month before filing of the return, all statutory forms has to be filed, like 10B and 10BB. Then AY 21-22, the FCRA provisions the related to foreign donations received, they need to complete all the provisions. Thank you, everybody. Here I would like to say special thanks to my DAT sir, Mr. Matthew. Thank you, sir. Next.
Thank you, Prashanti, for that elaborate explaining the provisions and filling up of the returns. Anyway, now the next session will be by Mr. Dharninath, DDIT from CPC. He will be explaining the provisions of that is, he will be presenting the schedule-wise summary as well as the common mistakes which have been noticed in the earlier years in ITR 7 and how to prevent them for the assessment year 2021. However, before that, I would like to call upon Mr. Sajit Kumar, Deputy Director of Income Tax from CPC, e-filing for his presentation or rather his words on unique document identification numbers. Over to you, Mr. Sajit Kumar.
Good evening to one and all. I'm sure by now actually all of you should be quite familiar with the requirement to link UDAN with the audit forms and audit certifications. ICAI had mandated every chartered accountant to generate a UDAN from the ICAI portal for whatever certifications they may be providing to their clients, be it income tax, be it for financial purposes, or be it for MCA purposes or any purposes. So any certification what a CA will be providing to his clients, for that certification, a UDAN will have to be generated, unique document identification number will have to be generated for the document from the ICAI portal, and inform to the stakeholders before that, before whom the certificate is being submitted. So in line with the ICAI notification and as per ICAI Act, as one of the downstream stakeholders, Income Tax Department, we have enabled capture of UDAN. Yes, currently actually UDAN has not been factored within the form, because if it has to be factored within the form, then there would be a requirement to amend all the current existing forms and certifications what have been published in the ITR rules. So what we have done is actually we have come out with a functionality through which actually UDAN for the form will be captured and linked to the form. So accordingly, whenever a CA certificate or audit report has to be uploaded, at the upload level itself, actually we are given a place to capture the UDAN what the CA has generated for that form of that SSC to be captured. And when that UDAN is captured, this capturing of UDAN facility was enabled way back from 27th April 2020 itself. But that time we are just capturing the UDAN and then later on storing it, and we were planning to share with the ICA at a later date. Now, instead of doing this offline mechanism, both ICA Income Tax Portal has networked itself through an API, and as and when you provided UDAN from 8th of this December, it will go and verify from the ICA database online in a milliseconds. Actually, this verification happens in milliseconds in a in real time, because you will not be able to know that actually it is happening. And moment this UDAN for the form has been validated, the user is allowed to go to the submit screen. Whether it is an online form or an offline form, the submit screen gets opened up only if the UDAN gets validated. If UDAN validation gets failed for whatever reasons, it could be you might be capturing the wrong UDAN, which you would have been generated for some other form or for some other SSC, or maybe actually there's a technical glitch in the ICA portal on account of which validation is not happening. A suitable error messages will come. So if there is a validation mistake and if it is on account of wrong UDAN which is being captured, then you may relook whether what you have typed is the correct UDAN. Still, if it is a correct UDAN which you have typed and still it is not getting validated, maybe because there could be a portal issue between, in ICA in validation process. That should not be a hindrance for any of the users in uploading the form. What you can do is you can just remove that UDAN field, whatever that you have captured there, and then prefer to update that UDAN for the form at a later date, and then go and proceed uploading the audit certificate or audit form. And after that, you can come to your e-filing account, the CAS login. Under CAS login, my account, under my account, there is a second menu called View Update UDAN. Click on that. Put your taxpayers for whom actually you'll have to update the UDAN. Put your taxpayers PAN number. And if you want to drill down, actually we are good further drilling down thing. You can put the form, filtering and all other things. Otherwise, actually, you could just put the PAN. All the forms what you have uploaded for the taxpayers will be shown there. And wherever the form, against the form, actually, the UDAN, if it is not provided, it will be blank. Okay, if UDAN has been provided at the upload level, UDAN will be present. And then what you can do is view update UDAN. There is a link on the last of the things. And accordingly, click onto the link. A window will open for you to capture the UDAN. Capture the UDAN. Again, the same UDAN will go for that online validation process. And once it gets validated, it gets updated. And this updating window has been given as per ICA regulations. Actually, okay, ICA has given a grace time of 15 days. Same 15 days grace period actually we have also provided. So if by chance actually due to some last minute rush and other things, you could not generate a UDAN from the ICA portal for whatever reasons, and if you have to upload a form, you can upload the form. Absolutely nothing, we don't prevent that. And within 15 days of upload, that is, we are given T plus. T is the transaction date plus 15 calendar days. Okay, so within that period, you can update the UDAN. And once, suppose a taxpayer, you upload a form and then you link an UDAN to the form. At later stage, you come to know that you have committed a mistake or some arithmetical error or clerical error in the audit certifications, whatever that, and you wanted to correct it. There is a provision. What you can do is, you should please ensure that actually the taxpayer has not accepted the form what you have submitted, what you uploaded. Request the taxpayer to not to accept it, and again you can upload the same form with the same UDAN. The portal permits it. And again, request the taxpayer, because right now we are working on it under taxpayers login. All these forms will be lying, and the data submission. Suppose if you are doing the revision on the same day, taxpayer may have a confusion which is the latest, because actually usually actually it is presumed that it is all the latest will be in the topmost. Okay, that last in first concept is actually what we follow in the e-filing thing to for the people to view in the window. So, but then we have not captured the day stamp. Day stamp we are shortly we are trying to capture that. So I mean timestamp we are not captured. So we are trying to modify the portal functionality to show even the timestamp so that even the taxpayer knows actually which is the latest form, not only by the look and feel, even by the timestamp, and ask him to accept the latest form what has been uploaded and accepted. Once taxpayer accepts it, the cycle is complete. You will not be able to change the UDN or the thing. The only other way is actually revising the things. Whether it is for 3CD, 3CB or 10B, 10AA or any form, 10 CCB or any form. There are around 34, 35 tax audit certificates actually as per the income tax rules. The procedure followed is one and the same. And again, after we came with online validation, we found that actually there were nearly 1 lakh and odd audit certificates which were uploaded from 27th April till 8th of December, for which actually UDN was not updated. And as per the CBDT circular, press release, actually all those certificates would have become invalidated because they said if UDN is not updated within 15 days, that form, even if it is accepted by the taxpayer, it will get invalidated. So to ensure that actually, so many lakhs of forms, not getting invalidated due to some small technical error or knowledge gap, we have relaxed the 15 days window. Now, all those who have not updated UDN subsequent to 27th April filings till this 27th April 2022, 8th of December, you can please update the UDN before 31st of December. Any query on UDN, if you have any problems, please feel free to approach our e-filing help desk. E-filing help desk contact details are there in the e-filing homepage under the contact tab. Thank you all.
Thank you for talk. Anyway, now I request Jardinath to please take over the next session.
Thank you, Ramesh sir. Good evening, everyone. After that very informative presentation on guidance to file ITR 7 for assessment year 2021 and the talk on UDIN, I will quickly take you through the specific sections, required schedules to be filled up, and the specific columns to be filled up in the ITR 7. This is basically a recap of the guidance presentation. As you're all aware, in respect of section 11 and 1023C 4 to 6A, income should be disclosed in schedule A, ER, and capital expenditure in schedule EC. Coming to section 1023A, the receipt should be disclosed in schedule IE2 and schedule VC, and exemption amount should be entered in serial number 8C of schedule part BTI. For assessees claiming exemption under this section, exemption is not allowable on HP income, income from house property, interest and dividend income. As section 1024 is concerned, receipt should be disclosed in schedule IE2 and or schedule VC, and exemption amount should be entered in serial number 9H of schedule part BTI. Further, under this section, exemption is not allowable on BP income and CG income for such assessees. As far as claiming exemption under section 1023C 3AB and 3AC are concerned, in the schedule to be filled up is IE3, and the objectives of the institution should be education for 1023C 3AB, and as the option to be chosen is medical for the other section, that is 1023C 3AC. Now, it may also be noted that the gross receipts including the government grants should be disclosed in schedule IE3 and or schedule VC, and ensure that the exemption amount is entered in serial number 9 of schedule part BTI. Similarly, for the SSCs claiming exemption under section 1023, 3 AD and AE, it is schedule IE4. The objectives are education for 1023C 3 AD and medical for 1023C 3 AE cases. Receipt should be disclosed in schedule IE4 and or schedule VC, while exemption amount should be entered in serial number 9 of part BTI. Exemption under section 1022B, 23B, 23D and all these sections and other clauses of section 10. The relevant schedule to be filled up is schedule IE or and schedule VC, and the exemption amount should be entered in serial number 8 of part BTI. Now coming to the exemption under the SSCs claiming exemption under section 13A. Income should be mentioned under all heads of income, and schedule VC, schedule LA should be filled up, and all conditions mentioned in section 13A should be fulfilled. Exemption amount should be entered in serial number 12A of the schedule part BTI. Now it may be noted here that BP income is not exempt for such SSCs claiming exemption under section 13A. When it comes to section 13B, enter the total contributions in schedule VC, and exemption is allowable on voluntary contributions. Schedule ET should be filled, and all the conditions mentioned in section 13B with read with rule 17CA should be fulfilled, and the exemption amount should be entered in serial number 12B of schedule part BTI. Now, as I have summarized, if you miss out entering the data in any of these places, it is likely that the exemption amount will be disallowed and the demand will be raised. So please ensure that all the columns, all the fields, all the relevant schedules are filled properly. Now that we have gone through the summary of this schedules and sections, let us see some of the common mistakes made in filling Tier 7. Now, before we go into further details, what are the consequences of making mistakes in filing ITR 7? Whether it is ITR 7 or any other ITR, every mistake can lead to prima facie adjustment. Not filling some particular schedule or particular column will lead to prima facie adjustment. And further, if you don't respond to the notice issued, or you don't file a rectification return, a rectified return, or in response to the notice, it is likely that the prima facie adjustment will be done and the demand will be raised. Now, let us see what are the common mistakes that has been observed while processing the returns in at CPC in respect of ITR 7. SSCs claiming exemption without entering the registration and approval details in schedule part A, general. Now, without the details of the registration, exemption cannot be allowed. So please ensure that the details are furnished in the relevant field in the return of income. So if you see the screenshot here, the exemption claimed is 2.28 crores, but because of not furnishing the details, what is allowed is 0, and the difference between what is claimed and what is allowed is the entire amount. So please be careful and fill up all these details wherever it is required. As per section 11.7, SSCs are not eligible to claim exemption under 10 other than 10.1 and 1023C if the trust or institution is registered under section 12A and or 12AA but still claims it. Now, the consequence is the same. The exemption is allowed and the demand is raised on this income. So once again request the taxpayers and the chartered accountants and the tax practitioners to be very careful in this aspect also while filing the return of income. As per the 20th proviso to section 1023C, SSC is not eligible to claim exemption under section 10 other than 10.1 if the trust or institution is approved under section 1023C 4, 5, 6 and 6A. So when you are claiming exemption under this particular section, ensure that the trust or institution is approved and you are claiming the exemption under the right section. We have also seen certain errors where SSC does not select the applicable clause of section in Schedule Part A General, and the amount of exemption entered in the corresponding field of Schedule Part BTI. This once again leads to exemption, and it is unnecessary hassle for all the stakeholders. The other very common mistake that has been observed in CPC is receipts are disclosed in schedules which are not applicable to the SSC. Now, what happens if you fill in the data in schedules which are not applicable? The incomes, the amounts mentioned in the not applicable schedules will be brought to tax as income of the SSC, because there is no exemption allowable under that particular section for that particular SSC. So please ensure that you fill up only the applicable schedules and not any and every schedule that is there in the ITR 7. Of course, as Ms. Prashanti had mentioned, now if you the moment you select the right section at the beginning of the return, the other irrelevant schedules will be grayed off and you will not be able to enter. But this is as per the department utility. Therefore, I would surely request each one of you to fill up only the applicable schedules and not anything else. We have also seen instances where SSC is registered under section 12A or 12AA, but he has not e-filed the audit report in form 10B. Now this has to be filed before filing the return of income, and I need not tell when it has to be filed. It has already been repeated twice. So ensure that the form 10B or form 10BB, wherever it is applicable, is filed before the before filing the return of income and well within the time that is allowed to file these audit reports. Now, we have also seen instances where form 10 and the return are not e-filed within the due date under 139(1). Now, the exemption claimed is not allowed in such cases because as per the proviso, as per the section, the return has to be filed within the due date under 139(1). As has been already mentioned, and as you are all aware, provisions of section 139(4) and 5 and other sections are not to be followed here. It is only 139(1). Again, this with regard to form 9A also the same situation. If it is not filed within the due date under section 139(1), exemption claimed is not allowed, and this again results in prima facie adjustment and raising of demand. Now, in case of SSCs claiming exemption under 13A, and the particular SSC has not satisfied the conditions under that section 13A, and also has not filed the return within due date. Now, the consequence is exemption is not allowed, demand raised. If you can see on the screenshot, the screen, there is a SSC who has claimed 181 crores of exemption under section 13A. But since the return of income was filed beyond 139(1) date, it is not filed within the due date, the exemption has been disallowed. SSC is claiming exemption under 13A, but then the return is not filed within the due date. Same thing, your exemption is disallowed and the demands are raised. And SSC, there are instances where we have seen like 1023C4 to 6A. It is filed in form 10B instead of form 10BB. Now, once you don't file the relevant form, there is no point in filing we don't consider the other form which is incorrect, even if it is filed well within time, and your exemption will be disallowed. Instances of SSCs registered under 12A and 12AA, but audit report is filed in 10BB instead of form 10B. Same thing, vice versa. When you file the wrong form, the exemption claimed is not allowed. So the other what I have already mentioned, SSC claiming exemption under 13B and has not satisfied the conditions of section 13B read with rule 17CA. And we have seen SSCs, the SSCs have disclosed accredited income in schedule 115 TD, but they have not computed the tax thereon. As you are aware, the income disclosed in schedule 115 TD is taxable. So CPC has no option but to bring to tax the income shown in Schedule 115 TD. There are certain incomes which arise due to non-compliance to the provisions of the Act, and these are entered in serial number 5, Schedule Part 5. You are aware that these incomes are not exempt. Therefore, if you have to be aware that the amounts mentioned in this column in this serial number 5 are brought to tax. And the other thing that has to be kept in mind is that the date of registration should be prior to the assessment year and not during the assessment year. So this has to be kept in mind. And if the date of registration is during the assessment year, then the particular assessee cannot claim exemption for the previous year. Now, as far as the rectification rights for assessment year 18-19 and the prior years are concerned, it is brought to your notice that all the rectification rights have now been transferred to the jurisdictional AOs, and it is the jurisdictional AOs who before whom you can file your rectification request, and they will take up the rectification that is required. And with regard to assessment year 19-20, details will be shared in the next presentation with regard to how to go about with the demands that have been raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Dharninath, for elaborating on what Prasadji had already presented. Hope this will answer a lot of questions and lot of doubts in the minds of the assessees and their representatives will be cleared. Anyway, now we are going to the next session. That is, the topic will be how to rectify the errors which have been committed in earlier assessment years. This will be handled by Mr. G.T. Shashi, who is an income tax officer from Centralized Processing Center, Bengaluru. So over to you now, Mr. Shashi.
Thank you so much, Ramesh sir. In earlier presentation, we saw what are the common mistakes which occurred leading to the rising of demand. Now here we'll see how we can rectify these errors of earlier assessment years. In some of the cases, there are instances where demand have been raised due to disallowance of exemption under Section 11, where due to delayed filing of return of income and statutory forms like Form 10 and 10B, which are supposed to be filed within the stipulated time. So in these cases, demands have been raised. So the CBDT, to overcome or to mitigate the hardship faced by the assessees, have brought out circulars wherein CAT exemptions have been authorized to admit such belated applications with request for condonation of delay. So one of the circular is circular number 2 of 2020 for assessment year 18-19 onwards, which primarily deals with condonation of delay in respect of Form 10B applications which are filed belatedly. While admitting these applications, the CAT exemptions have to satisfy themselves with regard to the genuineness of such claim, and assessee was had a reasonable cause which prevented him from filing, which resulted in filing of those applications belatedly. So considering all those cases and facts of the case, the CAT exemption can condone such delay. And with regard to assessment year 16-17 and 17-18, in respect of Form 10 and Form 10 and 9A, where returns have been filed, the CBDT wide circular number 6 of 20 has stated that CAT exemption can admit such applications if the returns of income have been filed by 31st March of such assessment year, and have authorized the CAT exemptions to admit such cases and decide the case on merits of each such cases. And with regard to circular number 3 of 2020 for 18-19 onwards, in respect of belated filing of Form 9A and Form 10, here also the CAT exemption were empowered to admit such applications, and subject to fulfillment of conditions like the assessee was prevented with a natural cause, reasonable cause which prevented him from filing such belated application. And also, while for in respect of Form 10 and 9A, the CAT exemption have to satisfy themselves that the assessee has invested the amounts in the modes prescribed under Section 11(5) of the Act. Subject to fulfillment of this condition, the CAT exemption can decide the 190 decide the condonation of the application and merit of such case. Once these applications have been disposed and condoned, the jurisdictional assessing officers can carry out rectification under Section 154 and revising all these demands which have been raised earlier. Now we come to the next the errors which could be rectified. For example, the in the 143 processing, the claim of the assessee under Section 11 would have been denied for a reason that the registration number or approval of 1023C, etc., have not been properly mentioned in the return of income. In such cases, what is the way forward? The assessee can provide the details in Part A, that is general personal information, by filing a rectification request before the jurisdictional AO. Once these have been filed, the AO can definitely take recourse to rectification under Section 154. Now, insofar as Section 1023C claim exemptions are concerned, here also the claim would have been denied while processing due to the fact that the exemption section has not been properly selected by the assessee, due to which demand would have been raised. Again, here also the assessee has the option of specifying the same section in Schedule Part A, General Personal Info, on par with the exemption claimed in Schedule Part BTI by filing an online rectification request along with the supporting documents, which could be decided by the assessing officer. Now, the one more instance is where demands have been raised is due to incorrect, not properly filling up the applicable schedules for assessment year 1920. Here also, due to these errors, the demand would have been raised and exemption would have been denied. These errors also can be rectified by the assessees by filling up the proper applicable schedules and filing an online rectification request on the e-filing portals, which can be decided by the jurisdictional assessing officer. Now, how to rectify these errors? For all the assessment years, 2018-19 and earlier assessment years, the rectification rights have been transferred to the jurisdictional assessing officer. The assessees can make the rectification request before the jurisdictional officers along with the requisite documents and information which could be taken on record by the assessing officer and decide the cases accordingly. Thank you so much. I come to the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Shashi, for guiding the representatives and the assessees with regard to how to rectify their earlier year returns and then the demands. Now, I call upon Sri Suresh Babu, Assistant Director of Income Tax from CPC, to make a presentation on frequently asked questions relating to processing of ITR 7 at CPC, which may include most of the questions, which are some of the questions which you have already asked either on the chat box or in your earlier correspondence with us, that is emails which you might have already sent to us in advance. So over to you, Suresh Babu.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. Now I will take you through some of the frequently asked questions and possible resolution for the same. Question 1. Should the assessee claiming exemption under Section 1025 approved gratuity, superannuation fund, employees provident fund trust use ITR 7 for filing return of income from 2018? This is the question what we have received. As per Circular 18 of 2017, the entities whose income is unconditionally exempt under Section 10 of the Income Tax Act and who are also statutorily not required to file return of income as per Section 139 of the Act there will be no requirement for tax reduction at source from the payments made to them. Section 1025 is one such provision. Hence, approved gratuity or superannuation fund, employees provident fund trust may use ITR 7 to claim refund of the TDS which has been wrongly deducted. Please note that they are not required to file return of income under section 139. The ITR 7 enables them to claim refund out of the wrongly deducted TDS. What date has to, question 2, what date has to be mentioned in the column date of furnishing of audit report in the schedule audit info of the return, whether it is date of audit report or date of filing of form 10B. Actually, answer is the date of acceptance of audit report in the income tax e-filing portal by the assessee has to be entered in the return. That is after audit report is uploaded by the chartered accountant and sent to the assessee. Unless the audit report is accepted by the assessee, audit report will not be considered for processing. Question 3, what does balance of corpus fund mean? Balance of corpus fund means unutilized balance of corpus fund. This has to be disclosed in Schedule J of the return. So sub question, in some cases there could be building fund which is already utilized for the purpose of construction. Would that still be required to be shown under this head? Not required to show since it is already utilized. Question 4, balance sheet will have a balance of accumulated income over expenditure from the income and expenditure account of every year. Whether it is required to be given in ITR 7, and if the trust has accumulated fund out of, similar question, if the trust has accumulated fund out of 15% under section 11(1)(a) set aside every year, where shall I show that balance? So answer is it is not required to show. Only the particular year accumulation of income should be shown in the return in serial number 45 of schedule part BTI. Question 5, a trustee is registered under section 12A. Since assessment year 16-17, return was being in the same way and no demand was raised. But for assessment year 2017-18, income from other sources has been taken as income by CPC and taxed. Demand was raised. How to get relief from the demand raised? If the assessee is registered under section 12A and the income is eligible for exemption under section 11, schedule AI has to be filled for income details and schedule ER and EC for application of income for the objects and claim and exemption can be claimed. Therefore, for more details in this regard, please refer to the help document which is available on the e-filing website. If one society has engaged in education activity and has income exceeding ₹1 crore, is it necessary to file the return under section 1023C6? If assessee is not approved under section 1023C6, then it is not eligible for exemption under section 1023(6), and hence assessee cannot file its return of income in ITR 7. It can use form ITR 5 or form as applicable to the concerned assessee according to the status. Question 7, whether basic exemption limit of ₹2,50,000 is available to a public charitable trust registered under section 12A, is tax levied as per slab rates or at 30%? According to the status and substatus of the assessee filled in Part A general, tax rates are applied. The individual slab rates are applicable to the status AOP or BOI and substatus of public charitable trust, as also substatus of society registered under Society Registration Act 1860. The same rates are applicable in ITR 5 also for the status and substatus mentioned earlier. Question 8, whether we need to fill expenditure on accrual basis or cash basis. Expenditure requires to be disclosed based on the accounting method adopted by the assessee. Sub question on accrual basis, trust will have outstanding balances as at the end of the year. What should be given as source of fund to meet expenditure for the portion of expenditure which is outstanding? Source of funds to meet application of income for charitable purposes allowed as exemption if the application is out of the income of relevant assessment year, which has to be filled in E1 of schedule ER. This question is already answered in the earlier presentation by Ms. Prashanti while explaining the guidance for filing return. Next question. Whether unregistered trust can file ITR 7. If assessees are covered under section 139 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, they are required to file in ITR 7. Others may use ITR applicable to their status. Whether audit report is necessary for section 1023C 3AD, there is no requirement to file any audit report to claim exemption under section 1023C 3AD. Whether the revocable trust, family trust can file ITR 5 or ITR 7. The applicable form is ITR 5. In ITR 5, schedule of partners or members has been enabled to furnish the details of the trust for applying the correct tax rates. Only the charitable trust registered under section 12AA or approved under 1023C 4, 5, 6 or 6A are required to file ITR 7. Whether registration is required for claiming exemption under section 1023C 3AD 3AE wherein the gross receipts are less than 1 crore. There is no requirement to get the registration for claiming exemption under section 1023C 3AD 3AE if all conditions for claiming the exemptions are satisfied. There is no requirement to fill the registration details in the return. Thank you. With this, I have come to the end of my presentation. So over to Ramesh sir.
Thank you, Suresh Babu. I hope most of the questions have been answered. However, there are lots of questions which have also come on the chat box. Some of the questions now I request my colleague Lakshmi to answer on behalf of CPC. Lakshmi, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Actually, one of the important things I would like to give information about is in filing of return of ITR 7. Please use the instructions which has been notified by the board. In the last 2 years, there has been a notification by the board on the instructions. So how it should be used, and actually, though the form may be huge, the applicable schedules for each of the entities who are filing ITR 7 is very few. So if you are filing your return form using the instruction, it would be really simple and very comprehensive and applicable. You won't be making error in filing the return. This is one point. And further, I would like to say that a help document has been sent by mail to all assessees who have been filing ITR 7 in the recent years. For all of the assessees, we have been sending the help document by mail as an attachment. Further, this help document is also available in the e-filing portal. Please use the same, which is a single sheet. It's a kind of a broadsheet kind of a thing. And each assessee who is for whom ITR 7 is applicable will just have to look at the section of exemption, and he would be directed to fill up which schedule and what are the requirements for getting the exemption. All that is being covered in the help document. Please use the same, and please use the proper ITR form for filing a return. And the important item, as I've already mentioned also little while ago, the status of the assessee, it determines the tax rates applicable for the assessee. So filling up of the status in Schedule Part A General is an important item when you are having income, and if the status is mentioned as a firm. As of now, we do not allow a firm to file in ITR 7. So I'm just giving it as an example. For a firm, the rate applicable is only at 30%. And so hence the return system, when it processes a return of a firm, it would be applying 30% rate. Similarly, a person who is not a firm, let us say it is an AOP, again, AOP also, if the share is determinate, then the rate applicable to the assessee would be at the rate applicable for the AOP. However, if your share of the members of the AOP are not determinate, again, it would be taxable at MMR. So the status of the assessee, filling up of the status of assessee appropriately in the return is the important feature in the return by filling up of the ITR. So ITR 7, usually in order to help the assessees filing ITR 7 for the last 2 years, we have made a provision in the return to disclose the substatus of the assessee, specifically for ITR 7, for an AOP. It could not be any other AOP. It will be usually a society who is eligible for exemption under section 11 or whatever. So what happens is, if you are a society registered under 1860 Act, Society Registration Act 1860, then your rate of tax would be slab rates applicable to an individual. So selecting the substatus and status appropriately in the return while filing the return is a very important factor which determines the tax computed on your income. And another thing which I have been regularly noticing in ITR 7, which has been in the chat box, is where assessee is income is unconditionally exempt. There, say section 1025 being a recognized provident fund, and so for these people, what happens is your section under which return is being filed is not 139, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D. As per rule 12 of the income tax rules, only persons who are eligible for filing return is person covered under section 139, 4A, 4B, 4C, and 4D. So the 1025 doesn't fall under any of these sections. For the enabling assessees to claim the exemption under that section 1025 and to claim the TDS which was not to be deducted in their cases, for allowing them the benefit of giving the legal of TDS wrongly made in their case, the ITR 7 has been enabled in our e-filing portal to allow such people also to file a return. So please use the proper section under which return is filed. So section under which return is filed has to be others if you are not covered under 139, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D. So if you are 1025 case whose income is unconditionally exempt, please use section under which others return is filed is others, and you have this specific drop down of section 1025 in the section under which exemption is claimed. That way you will be able to file your return in ITR 7 and claim that exemption and the TDS. That will help the TDS to be given out to these people. Only condition over here is, if you are a recognized person under those sections and your income is unconditionally exempt only, please use these sections. Please do not use it unless you are eligible for it. I think I have covered the main part which I have been seeing. There are many sections of unconditionally exempt, and as was told in the earlier sessions by others in this webinar, the list is available in the circular of the CBDT. Please go through that list, and those people also, if wrongly TDS has been made in their cases, you can file the return in ITR 7, and please do use the proper schedules which are required to be filled up. Do not use schedules which are not applicable to the entity. For this reason only, I also mentioned that instructions should be read thoroughly before you fill up the return, and not required to fill up many details in the return. It's really a very simple form, and the sections which has to be filled up by each kind of assessee is very, very little. Number of fields to be filled up by particular assessee is very less. Already told by Prasanthi in the earlier session. Prasanthi madam has given the exact way in which each exemption person has to fill up, which schedule has to be filled up. So please use only those schedules. Do not enter details in any other schedule. For the assessment year 2021, if you are using ITR 7 of a department utility, you will be guided in the utility itself, and the errors and unnecessary information would not be accepted in the return, and errors would be popping up on your screen, and it will help you to fill up the return thoroughly, properly and appropriately, so that your expected output is will be available to you when the return is processed. If you are using other utilities, other ERIs utilities, you can also use those XMLs and check out in our department utilities. Open the XML using department utility, then you will know how many errors are there, and you will be able to correct your errors by filing a revised return, because the timeline for filing revised return also has been given in line with the time for filing return. So you can file a revised return till the end of the year, financial year. Please use the appropriate utility. Department utility is always suggested, and you will get the errors in the utility on your screen itself, and you will be able to correct it and file your return appropriately, so that your expected output comes out in your intimation which is received from the department. Thank you, sir. Ramesh sir, I have finished my...
Thank you, Lakshmi, for your knowledgeable or rather impart of knowledge to our participants. We have received lot of queries on the chat box also during the webinar. All of this could not be answered immediately. However, see, whatever queries are there on processing of ITR 7 will be definitely accepted, and we will try to send individual replies to all those people who have sent, provided they have provided their email IDs, or if not, they can still provide their email IDs. And one more thing I would like to say is help document for filling ITR 7 for the assessment year 2021 is also available on ITR e-filing portal. So please make use of that facility also. And I hope lot of queries or lot of confusions have been cleared with all these presentations which have been made by our speakers. Hopefully this clears lot of doubts. However, even if some doubts or some confusions are still there, you are most welcome to send your queries with your email IDs, so that in the chat box, so that will be replied to you in a short while. Hopefully within the next few days. Now with this, I hand over the session to our beloved DIT for making his conclusion or concluding remarks. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ramesh. Dear friends, I hope you got enough awareness on whatever queries you had in mind through the presentation by the speakers. And see, with our experience of earlier webinars, let me tell you that, see, most of the questions, we had sent a notification earlier when we announced the webinar that please send your query one day in advance. We are given time till yesterday 11 a.m. And whatever queries came during that period, we have answered right now. And most of the questions came in the chat box also were repetitions. And most of the questions have been which are directly related to CPC processing, and whatever related to CPC have been answered. And maybe some of the questions would be something related to tax planning, or no, where there is a issue of debatable issues are involved that we may not be able to answer. But by and large, on ITR 7 filing, the questions which have been asked have been answered. But we would like to give you another 5 minutes time before we wind up the WebEx, to type in the chat box, but we will be concluding our sessions right now. But the WebEx platform will be open for another 5 minutes for you to, again, in case your query, which is related to e-filing or CPC processing, specifically only that, you can type the question again with the email ID. You know that we have with minimum manpower, we are fully busy with the last minute with the processing of returns of 2021 and also e-filing. Entire manpower is busy, but we'll take some time to respond to the most important queries. So please post your query again with your email ID so that we will be able to answer that. And dear friends, thank you so much for coming in large number. And we got more than 1,015 participants in the beginning. And I would like to tell you that please don't delay the filing of return. Please file the return immediately. That means you have to file the statutory forms now itself, so that 1 month before you have to do that. Please do that immediately. Don't wait for the last minute to do that. And we assure you full cooperation and support to all of you, and whatever suggestions you have, you can contact us. Our details are contact details are given in the portal. You can contact us, send your suggestions. If it is not related to CPC, ITR, it is larger question issues are involved where CBDT has to take note of that. We will forward that to CBDT. Thank you so much for coming in large numbers. Over to G. Suresh Babu.
Yes, sir. So, good evening. First of all, I would like to thank the Director of Income Tax CPC Bangalore for giving me an opportunity to propose the vote of thanks. Sir, you have been a constant support and encouragement to us to conduct this program. Thank you for your support, sir. On behalf of CPC Bangalore, I would like to thank all the chartered accountants, tax practitioners, assessees, and other guests for actively participating in this program. I would like to thank Shri K.R. Narayana, additional DIT and e-filing team for supporting us in giving wide publicity about the webinar in e-filing website. I would also like to thank Shri Purnachandra ADIT and system team for extending technical support to conduct the program successfully. I would also like to thank the MSP team in supporting us to conduct the program successfully. Last but not the least, I thank all the officers and staff and all those who supported us directly or indirectly to conduct the program. I once again thank everyone for making this program successful. Thank you all.
Dear friends, let me announce that based on the webinars, whatever questions come on, not only this webinar, we conduct about 7 webinars this year, and all the questions which have come through chat box and through mail, we have compiled as a handbook, and within a couple of days, we will be disseminating that. Mostly in your, it will be reaching your tax consultant bodies or ICA bodies, wherever chapters we will be sending there also. And also we will try to upload it in our portal, and that will answer a lot of your queries. And as B.R. Ramesh and Lakshmi mentioned, this help document is already there. We uploaded in the e-filing portal. And please always read the instructions along with the return which is being given before filling the return. Please go through the instructions. Elaborate instructions have been given. Thank you.
I would like to again make the same announcement that for another 5 minutes we'll keep open the chat box. So please fill in your queries along with your email IDs, so that wherever it is possible, we'll try to answer all your queries wherever possible at the earliest. Thank you so much, friends. Thanks for responding in large numbers and making this program a grand success. Thank you so much.